She closed the cabinet and said, flat like a meeting agenda, "Not tonight. Not this week. Stop pushing." I was standing by the kitchen island with 2 plates and a pan still warm in my hand. "I'm not pushing. I'm asking what's going on with us." "Nothing's going on." She flicked her eyes at the clock. "I've got an early morning." "You've had an early morning for 2 months," I replied. "I'm not a calendar reminder. I'm your husband. Don't start." She cut me off, grabbing her phone. "I'm not doing this right now." She walked out with that stiff, efficient stride she started using at home, like she was on a mission to avoid me. The pan hissed behind me. I turned off the burner, stared at the 2 plates I'd set like an idiot, and made a note to myself. The temperature in this house dropped without touching the thermostat. If I'd known where it was headed, I wouldn't have set the table. I would have set a timer. I put the food away, wiped the counter, and went to the living room. She was on the couch, legs tucked, phone at eye level. "Can we schedule 20 minutes tomorrow?" I asked. "No drama. Just talk." "Schedule." She smirked without looking away. "That's cute. I'm serious." "Then be serious somewhere else, Mark. I'm exhausted." "Okay. Tomorrow, 8 p.m. I'll bring the grown-up voices." She sighed hard, like I'd asked her to move a couch alone. "Fine. 8. I slept light that night. Not sad. Just taking notes. When someone refuses to show up, you stop putting out chairs. The next evening at 8, I was at the table with coffee and a legal pad. I didn't need the pad. I needed a record in my own head that I approached this like an adult. She sat across from me with arms folded and that distance in her eyes. I kept it simple. "I miss you," I started. "You haven't wanted to touch me. You barely talk to me. And when you do, it's short and sharp. I'm asking if something's wrong, and I'm not leaving until I have an answer." "You're making it a thing," she answered. "It's a season. I'm tired. A season usually has a reason. Work? Health? Me?" She shrugged. "All of the above, none of the above. I don't want to break down my mood like a lab report." "Is there something I did? Do I have to coach you on how to be a husband now?" She tilted her head. "That's not a good sign. I'm not asking for coaching. I'm asking for honesty." "Honesty?" She laughed once. "Okay, you've gotten intense. Every conversation is US. Every night is a check-in. It's suffocating. I need space." "You can ask for space without treating me like a push notification you swipe away." She glanced at the clock. "We done? I have laundry." "We're not done," I said, steady. "What does space look like? Be concrete." "Less everything." "That's vague." "I'm allowed to be vague," she said, standing. "I don't have to perform your version of connection on demand." "Then here's mine," I said, and slid the pad away. "I'll stop chasing. I'll stop planning. I'll give you calendar space and physical space. But I'm not going to be a utility you plug into when you feel like it. If you're out, say it." "I'm not out." She grabbed the basket. "I'm just not in the mood for this constant pressure." "Understood." I nodded. "We'll cool it. Also, I'm canceling the couple's dinner at the Wilkins this weekend. No point smiling for strangers." "Don't cancel my plans," she snapped. "They were our plans. I'm stepping out. You're free to go." She stared for a second, recalculating. "Whatever." She left the room. I watched the doorway, took a breath, and made a small adjustment in my head. I'd just set my first boundary. No more default appearances. No more dragging my dignity into rooms where it got parked by the door. A few days later, I rolled into my shop early, industrial park, concrete floors, the smell of oil and honest work. Jay, my lead tech, handed me a coffee. "You look like you slept on a list," he said. "Close," I told him. "I slept on a decision. Big one. Scaling back at home," I said, flipping the open sign. "Space requested, space granted. I'm not going to be a walking comfort station." Jay raised an eyebrow. "You sure you want to play that game?" "It's not a game," I answered. "It's policy. People get what they demonstrate. She's demonstrated distance. I'll stop crossing it." "All right, boss," he said. "Just don't pretend you're fine if you're not. I can handle you being human." "I'm human," I said. "I'm also done begging for clarity." That week, I moved into the guest room. No announcement. I carried my clothes down the hall before work, folded, sorted quietly. After dinner, I washed my plate and went to my room to read, not out of spite, out of self-respect. She noticed on day 2. "What are you doing?" she asked, standing in my doorway. "Respecting your request," I replied, not looking up from the book. "Space." "That's not what I meant." Then you can define it when you're ready. Until then, this works. That's dramatic, she shot back. No, it's tidy. She hovered, uncertain, then rolled her eyes and walked off. The next morning, she was oddly cordial. Coffee on the counter, my travel mug cleaned and set by the sink. Thanks, I said. She shrugged. Don't read into it. I had the sponge out. Like care. The first softening. I noted it and didn't feed on it. Friday, she wanted to go to a neighbor's barbecue. Are you coming? She asked, half turned toward the door. I'll show my face, I replied. Short visit. At the barbecue, she was in hostess mode. Big smile, little digs. When Mike from down the block asked how work was, I answered, and she cut in with a thin little joke about me marrying the shop. A few chuckles. I let it slide. Later, by the drinks cooler, someone asked about our canceled couples dinner. Mark's overwhelmed, she said, tossing her hair. He's in a feelings sprint. I set down my cup. No, I corrected, calm. I don't attend events where my wife treats me like a problem to solve. I said it lightly, not a jab, just a boundary. A few heads turned. She looked like I'd put a glass pane between us in public. That was intentional. Wow, she answered. So we're doing this here. We're doing clarity, I replied. I'm not an anecdote. Not here, not at home. She stared, regrouped, then shifted back to charm with the neighbors. That night, she brought me a plate of fruit without a word, set it on my desk, and left. Second softening, even lighter. I ate the fruit and kept reading. The following week, I adjusted further. I moved our joint bills to auto-pay with notifications to my phone only, set up a separate card for my gas and work-related expenses, and put a freeze on discretionary transfers. Not because I wanted to punish her, because I wanted my house to match my reality. 2 adults, 2 sets of choices, 2 sets of responsibilities. I wrote it out on the fridge board. She saw it Tuesday morning. You changed the accounts? I made them cleaner, I answered. Less friction. So you can hide your spending? So I can stop being the only one tracking anything, I said. You want more space, take more responsibility. That's fair. She looked me over like I was an interesting insect. Then she smirked. Wow, little dictator. I smiled back. Little accountant. She went cold again after that. Less talk, more closed doors. I stopped knocking. Coming home a week later, I noticed an extra car in our driveway. Her sister's sedan. I parked on the street, grabbed the mail, and walked quietly toward the back door. Voices floated out from the kitchen. I don't make a habit of listening at doors, but the tone had that edge you don't ignore when it's about you. Her sister asked, "Why are you acting like this? He's a good man. What will you do if he leaves?" Then my wife's laugh, loud and clean. Leave? I'll get paid for it. And take half his stuff. I didn't feel a stab. I felt a click, like a safe door sealing shut. Plan identified. Not a season. A strategy. I stepped into the kitchen. Her sister's eyes widened. My wife froze, mouth half open. "Did you hear?" she started. "Deal?" I said, tone neutral. "I'll send you the bill." She went pale. I was kidding. "Yeah," I answered. "I heard you laugh. Keep going." Her sister didn't move. She just watched me, hands around a coffee mug. I walked to the bedroom, pulled out a duffel, and packed the essentials. Work clothes, toiletries, the small box with my grandmother's watch. No rush. No slamming drawers. Just a man collecting what's his. I came back through the kitchen with the bag. "Mark, you're being ridiculous," my wife said. "It was a joke. You misunderstood." "Plenty understood," I told her, passing the island. "Congratulations on your business plan. Where are you going? Away from this. You're really going to leave over a joke?" I stopped at the door. "You don't joke about cashing out a person. You announce who you are. I'm done paying for the announcement." She tried a smile that didn't land. "You're overreacting." "Maybe," I said. "But overreacting beats under-respecting myself." "Don't do this," she threw out, desperate edge creeping in. "We can talk tomorrow." "No," I answered. "We talked." "You laughed." I looked at her sister. She didn't blink. Good. Someone needed to witness the exchange. On my way out, my wife shot a last line at my back. "Why are you performing?" "I was just kidding. You heard it wrong." I turned the knob, looked over my shoulder. "Yeah, I heard how funny it was. Keep at it." I walked out and closed the door hard enough to clarify, not hard enough to break anything. The next morning I was at my desk when the county clerk's office opened. I signed what needed signing, sent what needed sending. After that I opened new accounts, transferred my personal earnings to a secure place, and rerouted my direct deposit. I called a lawyer recommended by a client who went through a clean split. We spoke like professionals. I said I wanted simple and fair. He said fair starts with a plan. I had one. Then I found a furnished one-bedroom near the shop. 10 minutes away, small balcony, shut-up-and-sleep kind of place. I signed for 3 months. Jay helped carry my toolbox from the garage. "You good?" he asked, hauling the heavy end. "I'm better than last night," I answered. I kept working. Work is honest. Engines don't lie. 2 days of quiet followed. On day 3, my phone lit up with her name in big letters. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again. Then again. I answered on the 4th. She didn't say hello. She screamed, "Where are my money? Why is the account empty?" I let the silence sit a beat. Then, "That's your first question? Good to know what you care about. You drained it." "I moved my income to my account," I replied. "Basic adult procedure." "You had no right," she shot back. "We're married. You've had no interest in anything but my output for months," I said. "Now you're interested? Interesting." "Answer me," she yelled. "Where are my money? Why is the account empty? All you're interested in is my money? Where would you have money from? You didn't work a day." I kept my tone even. "The joint account paid the bills. It still will. The rest is separate until we sort this out. I am your wife. Your money is mine too." I laughed, short and dry. "You're not my wife anymore, if you missed that memo. By the way, how are you going to settle up with me? I hope you have a rainy day fund. Time to use it." She went ecstatic in fury. I ended the call while I was still calm. Then I put the phone down and went back to the brake job on the lift. You don't let shouting set your schedule. That afternoon, the text started. Paragraphs of blame, leaps of logic, creative history. I didn't answer. I told my lawyer to route anything necessary through him. That night, I slept in the new place with the balcony door cracked and the city hum like a plain, honest lullaby. In the days that followed, she started a little campaign. Mutual friends got stories that I'd run off with someone else, that I left her penniless, that I was cold and cruel. People called me with the news like they were handing me a weather report I couldn't change. Mike, the neighbor, called first. "Buddy, she's talking wild." "I'm not engaging," I told him. "If someone cares enough to ask me, I'll answer. If they don't, they can enjoy the show." "You want me to host a truth night?" he joked. "No, I'll show up to my life and let that be the statement." 2 days later, I stopped by Mike's for a backyard thing. Guys, burgers, harmless noise. I planned to stand in the corner and mind my plate. I didn't plan on her showing up. She walked in like she owned the block, gave me a flat look, and started working the crowd. I stayed steady. She waited until there were enough ears, then lifted her voice. "Well, look who decided to join the living," she announced, eyes on me. "Too busy with your new arrangement to support your household?" I set my plate down. "Careful," I said. "You're confusing silence with permission." "We all know what happened," she went on. "He threw me out financially. Left me with nothing." A few people shifted, uncomfortable. Mike looked between us like a ref. I kept my voice even. No one got thrown anywhere. I left a house where I was treated like a debit card with shoes. Bills are paid. Luxuries are not. That's the policy. "You're unbelievable," she said. "You turned everyone against me." "I didn't say a word to anyone," I replied. "You did." Loudly. Then her sister, who I hadn't seen since the kitchen, spoke up from the steps where she'd been sitting quiet. "He's telling the truth," she said, voice steady. "You and I had coffee. You told me exactly how you feel about him and his money. You laughed about it." The yard went very still. My wife blinked like she'd been slapped by air. "You're taking his side?" "I'm stating what happened," her sister answered. "Don't make me repeat the sentences." No one wanted a fight in Mike's backyard, especially Mike. He cleared his throat. "Let's keep it respectful." "It is respectful," I said. "This is me respecting myself." My wife's eyes started scanning for exits. "Mark, can we talk alone?" she asked, voice suddenly soft. "Put it in writing," I answered. "I'm done with hallway summits." I finished my burger, thanked Mike, shook a few hands, and left. That was my public boundary. No yelling. Just lines drawn where everyone could see them. That evening she texted. Not a paragraph this time. 3 words. "I miss you." Then a picture of a plate of pasta. Then, "Can we meet? I'll cook." I watched the dots appear and vanish. Softening number 2. I allowed myself one breath of nostalgia for the nights we used to be on the same team. Then I set the phone down and went for a run. A man can acknowledge history without crawling back into it. The next morning, she switched gears again. Urgent, the text read. We need to discuss the mortgage. I responded, send your proposal through counsel. I'm trying to be reasonable, she replied. So am I wrote back. Reasonable is in writing. She called. I let it ring. Then she left a voicemail in a voice I hadn't heard in months. Soft, almost sweet. Mark, I was out of line. I got scared and said stupid things. Can we hit reset? Maybe dinner? No pressure. I drove to work without answering. At lunch, Jay sat with me on the curb behind the shop. You're stone, he said. I'm steady, I corrected. You're allowed to flinch. I did, I told him. Once. In the kitchen. Then I adjusted. He nodded, kicked a pebble. If she shows up here, you want me to run interference? I want you to mind the lift, I said. If she shows up here, I'll handle my life on my turf. She showed up that afternoon. I was under a car when the office bell chimed and her voice floated back. Is Mark here? I rolled out, wiped my hands, and stood in the doorway. She wore careful makeup and that cardigan she puts on when she wants to look approachable. She held a paper bag like a peace offering. Brought lunch, she said. Holding it up. I ate. I replied, thumbs hooked in my back pockets. Can we talk? She glanced at Jay, who suddenly found an urgent reason to inventory bolts. We can talk right here, I said. Briefly. She took a breath. I said things I didn't mean. You meant them enough to plan around them. I was venting. You were rehearsing, I answered. Let's not insult each other. She took a step closer. I miss us. You miss the comfort, I said. Different item. That's not fair. It's accurate. Her eyes hardened for a second, then softened like she remembered the playbook. Please. 10 minutes. Just us. I don't do closed doors with you anymore, I replied. You want to discuss logistics? Email me. You want to apologize? Send it once. I'll read it once. She gripped the paper bag tighter. You don't have to be cruel. This is me being kind, I said. Cruelty is letting you think nothing has changed. She stood there, bag sagging, and realized it wasn't going to work. Fine, she snapped. You'll hear from someone then. Looking forward, I answered, and returned to the car on the lift. Action beats words, every time. That night she unleashed a last-round burst of stories. Friends sent me screenshots. I didn't chase down a single person. I did, however, call my mother and my brother and gave them the short version so they heard it from me. Then I sent a single group text to the few people who mattered. We're separating. I'm not discussing details. I'm well. Please don't pick sides. That was it. My life was not a rally. A week later, my lawyer texted that the financial disclosures were in. No surprises. I signed what protected my work, my retirement, and the house I bought before the marriage. The joint assets were clean and modest. The paperwork moved along. She called that night anyway, fury back in her voice. You're trying to leave me with nothing. I'm leaving you with exactly what you brought and what we built on paper, I answered. Not the story you tried to write. You're heartless. I'm responsible. She tried the last lever. We were a team. Teams don't bench one player and cash his checks, I said. You didn't want a teammate. You wanted a provider without presence. I'm not volunteering for that. You're not even giving me a chance. I gave you months, I replied. You spent them auditioning for a payoff. Silence. Then a sharp inhale. You'll regret this. I don't regret protecting my respect, I said. I regret taking so long. She hung up. I put the phone face down, poured water, and watched the city from my small balcony. Simple view. No drama. That's what dignity feels like. Air you can breathe. When the papers were finalized, it was a weekday. I didn't make it a ceremony. I drove to the old house with a key that still worked, walked through rooms that had known both of us, and checked the list. Utilities transferred, locks changed with a scheduled date, mailbox key in my pocket, her remaining boxes labeled and stacked politely by the garage door for pickup. We'd already arranged the timeline through email. She had moved into a smaller place across town, a complex where parking is tight and neighbors hear everything. Her sister sent me one text. She's moving this weekend. I didn't respond. Not coldness, closure. The lawn looked tired. I mowed it. My hands like to fix things when my head is done with them. I was locking up when her car pulled into the driveway. She got out fast, stopped a few feet away, and studied me like I was a stranger on her porch. You're really taking it all back, she said, gesturing vaguely at the house. I'm taking back what I brought and what I kept up, I answered. You're taking what's yours. She glanced at the boxes. This is it. That's what you left, I said. I thought you'd. I don't know, be generous. I replied. I walked away when it was time. I didn't drag this through months of noise. That's generosity. You don't have to be so final. I do, I said. Final is healthy. She looked smaller without the attitude. Then she played the last card she had. Can we at least sit and talk for 10 minutes? No lawyers. Just us. I shook my head. No. You don't get coffee with the man you try to turn into a payout. You get a receipt. A receipt for what? She fired back, brittle. For the cost of disrespect, I said. It's expensive. She flinched at that word. Not because it was harsh. Because it was true. Last thing, I added, pointing to the envelope on the hall table by the door. Garage opener, list of items, forwarding addresses, and a copy of the final terms. No surprises. She stared at the envelope like it might bite. You really changed the locks. In 2 hours, I corrected. After the mover picks up your boxes. You've got until then. She swallowed, tried to hold my eyes, and failed. You think you won. I stopped playing, I said. That's the win. I stepped off the porch and headed to my truck. She called after me, voice shaky. Mark, don't be like this. I paused at the driver's door, turned slightly. This is exactly who I am when respect leaves the room. Clean, quiet, done. I opened the door. Take care of yourself. Is that it? That's it, I said. Invoice sent. I got in, started the engine, and pulled away. No music. No victory lap. Just the road, simple and straight. 2 months later, the house felt like mine again. Not because it was empty, because it was orderly. The workshop in the garage had actual workbenches again, not storage for resentment. Jay and I finished a side project rebuilding an old V8 after hours. On Friday nights, I grilled on the back patio with a couple of buddies from the shop. We told stories about cars that fought back and customers who tipped with pies. Normal men, normal laughs. No one performed. I upgraded the pickup I'd been nursing along for years. Nothing flashy, just one that starts, hauls, and doesn't argue. On Sunday mornings, I took it out early and drove the back roads with coffee in a thermos, not because I was escaping anything, because I liked the quiet. I wasn't looking for anyone new. Life has a way of putting people in your path when you stop trying to drag them there. A client's sister brought her sedan in for a check engine light and asked 3 smart questions. She had a dry sense of humor and a career she didn't apologize for. We talked twice in the lobby without trading numbers. The third time, she handed me a card. If you ever want to try a diner that serves eggs without speeches, she said, call. A week later we did. It was easy. No performance. No tests. We ate pancakes and made fun of the world in a gentle way. When she asked, what happened before me? I gave her 3 sentences, not a saga. She nodded like an adult and changed the subject. That's respect. Word drifted back about my ex from mutuals who still text me pictures of their kids and house projects. She'd moved to a cheaper complex, then took on a roommate to meet her payments. She tried to start some online hustle and discovered it's called a hustle because it's work. Her sister stopped by my shop one afternoon, not to stir anything, just to pick up her car. At the counter, she hesitated. You handled it with more grace than I thought possible, she said. I handled it like a man who ran out of interest in bleeding quietly, I replied. She keeps telling people you were cruel, the sister said. I was clear, I answered. Cruel would have been staying and pretending. She nodded, signed the receipt, and left. On a quiet Thursday, I walked through my house after dinner, turned off lights, and stood in the doorway to the guest room. The room I'd moved into when I still believed space might be a bridge instead of a wall. I didn't feel triumph. I felt alignment. Everything matched again. My choices, my house, my company, my sleep. You can love a person and decide they don't get to manage your worth. You can want to fix a thing and realize you were the only one with a wrench. It's not brave to leave when someone tells you they'll cash you out. It's adult. And it's not revenge to live better. It's just living without a weight on your neck. The last time I heard from her, she sent a message with no punctuation. I learned my lesson. Can we at least meet once? I sat with it for a minute. Then I typed, I hope you did. I wish you well. No meeting. She replied with a single word. Why? I sent the last line I'll ever send her, because the bill was paid. Then I put the phone down, stepped onto my back patio, and watched the evening settle on a house that respects me back.